Hey there, I'm Louie, and in this video we're going to be talking about crocheted color changes. We'll be talking less about how to actually make a color change and more about how color changes behave. So if you want to learn how to actually crochet a color change, check out my first video here or in the description below, and come back to this video once you finish that one. We'll also specifically be working with single crochets and when working in the round or in a spiral without turning, the most common way to make amigurumi. Alright, without further ado, let's get hooking. First, to get a better idea about color changes in a single crochet, let's look at all the parts of this stitch. The top loop. This is the top of the single crochet. It's made first by pulling through the two loops from the previous stitch with a new loop. Often this is thought as finishing up a single crochet, but you can also think of it as starting a new stitch as well. The top loop can be any one solid color. The V. This is the V-like formation seen from the front of the stitch. This is made secondly for a single crochet and can be made a different color than the top loop. The back loop. This is the horizontal bar on the back side of the single crochet below the top loop. Normally you don't see this part of the stitch when making amigurumi because you usually don't turn. The back loop is always the same color as the V and is made simultaneously. How color changes behave. Now let's look at how each of these parts of the stitch perform after working a few rounds of stitches. I'm making the tops of these three stitches shades of purple and the bottom of the stitches, the V and the back loops, different shades of green. I'll continue to make the same color changes in the exact same spots in the next round to look at how the stitches change positions and what they look like. Okay, I finished a few more rounds. Let's look at what happened to our stitches. The first thing to notice is that the stitches are pulled off to the right. As we continue making rounds, you'll notice more and more that stitches kind of veer off to the right. The amount that it moves over depends on your gauge, but it's usually around one whole stitch for every 3 rounds. There's not a whole lot you can do about this other than use a different stitch, like the split single crochet stitch, which comes with its own drawbacks. The best way I've found to combat this is to work with it, anticipating it and moving slightly over to make better angles in my color changes. And if you want a better vertical line, try moving the color changes over one stitch to the left every 3 rounds. It won't be perfect, but it's not too bad. Now let's look closer. The stitch's top loop sits between 2 V stitches, the one from the next round that's worked into the same top loop that we're looking at, and the next stitch in the next round. This means that while the stitch as a whole is being pulled slightly to the right, the top of the stitch is moving slightly to the left. This is important to know. Let's say you're trying to make a circle with color changes. To get a defined top of the circle, try making half color changes before you start the full color stitches in the circle. Because the tops of the stitches get pulled slightly left, you can add one full color stitch more than you have half color stitches in the round before and get a more round top to your circle. Using this top loop correctly can be tricky and seem insignificant, but it can make a big difference in the end. This top loop can be really beneficial for making a solid line between rounds too. This is something that I talked about in a lot of detail in my video for making the perfect stripes, which you can find here in the description or at the end of the video. If you want an even more defined line of color change, try working in the back loops only of the stitches. This will leave a solid bar between rounds. The only problem with this is that it'll show these little spikes of color. I've used this to my advantage though with things like my piranha plant pattern, whereby working into the back loops only, it creates little spikes of white teeth. How to avoid bleed through. When doing color changes, you'll have to work with 2 strands of color at once. Often this means working around a strand in a different color of yarn for a few stitches to hide the end in. Here's the problem with that. You'll often be able to see just a bit of the color of the yarn that you're working around through the stitches, especially if you're working with contrasting colors like yellow and purple. If you're working with amigurumi, this can be pretty easily prevented. Instead of working around the strand for a few stitches before changing colors, change colors at the last moment. This would normally leave you open to stitches falling apart, But with amigurumi, your loose ends are left on the inside of the piece, making it not very likely for it to come unraveled. If you really want to lock the piece in, try twisting the yarn once before changing colors. And if the color changes aren't too far away from each other, let's say 4 stitches apart between color changes, then just drop the color and come back to it when you need it, so that you don't have to cut it and leave loose ends on the inside. Don't do this with too many stitches apart though, or it will become more of a hindrance than helpful.
Thanks so much for watching or reading along. This is part of an ongoing series called Amigurumi 101, brought to you by Club Crochet and created by me, Louie. I'll be talking a lot more about color changes in the future, including how to read color changes in patterns and how to do color changes in different stitches like bobble stitches. So make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel down below and push notifications so you don't miss it when I create another video. Also try liking the video down below, it helps the channel grow. And if you want to, you can subscribe to the newsletter at clubcrochet.com so you don't miss future episodes. And if you want to skip the wait, consider becoming a Club Crochet member. Members get early access to future videos, exclusive Amigurumi 101 tutorials, weekly patterns and projects, and monthly kits mailed directly to their door with all the materials they need to make whatever project we're working on at the time. Plans start at only $5 a month, and you can learn more at clubcrochet.com. Thanks again for watching, pasta la pizza, and happy hooking. Bye.